You know that feeling when you're lying in bed, going through your mental to-do list, maybe the bill you haven't paid yet, or the will and trust you haven't done, the call you keep putting off, or the life admin thing that has been following you around for months. And you tell yourself, I'm going to handle it. And then life happens. And then another week goes by. If this is you, here's the good news. There is a strong chance you're not actually lazy or irresponsible. You're just overwhelmed. And there is a very specific reason for that. Today, you'll hear from Melody Murray, reality show producer turned licensed marriage and family therapist. She is amazing. She's the author of Mourning the Living, When the Loved One You've Lost is Still Here. And she's appeared on The Today Show, The Doctors, among many other shows, and has been featured in the New York Times, Washington Post, Business Insider, Newsweek, and AARP. Melody has been here on this podcast multiple times before, and she always provides us with amazing insight and practical tools. Today, we talk about why we might feel stuck, how our bodies are taking the hit, and most importantly, what we can do about it. This is the Grown-Ass Woman's Guide. I'm Jackie McDougall. I asked in the group, in the Facebook community, about like adulting and how many women feel like they've got it locked down. And 33% of the women were like, yep, got it. No notes. We are good.
Wow, that's impressive.
Right? And then things shift. We're either inconsistent or we're happily burying our heads in the sand, or it's just overwhelming. And so my mission in life is to help women show up, to create the will and trust, to have the conversation, to look at life insurance, all these like lame ass boring topics that we have to really address. Like I'm trying to make it a lot more accessible. But here's the thing. I cannot pretend that the reason that we're not doing this stuff is because we're lazy and we don't want to do it, when there is so much going on in this season of our lives, whether we're over 40, 50, postmenopausal, whatever, current events, like all of the things. And so thank you for coming today and talking about this, because I don't want to just be like, what? You're not getting this done? Like, what's wrong with you? Because that is not the case, right?
We're all in different places in life. We all have different resources, different barriers. So it's unfair to do this kind of broad and general blanket statement. It's disrespectful because it's not taking into account people's actual life circumstances.
100%. We can't just look across the board and be like, oh, she did it. Look at, she pulled herself up from the bootstraps and you didn't. Like, what's wrong with you? So I think it's fair to say that a lot of us are walking around, that we're all in a bit of state of chaos right now. Would you agree or disagree with that?
100%. I think only someone blind and dead would say differently. We are absolutely in a state of chaos. And I think that there are multiple reasons why either some people are diving face first into the chaos or completely oblivious to it. And they're both based in the same thing. You grew up in unpredictable circumstances. You grew up in chaos. And if you grow up in chaos, you learn how to navigate it. You learn how to survive. But unfortunately, surviving in chaos doesn't mean you know how to thrive past it. And so, yeah, people are in it, and either you're in it and you're absorbing all of it, or you're on the outside of it and you're like, and I think frankly, it's like part of you is unhealed. You haven't healed from that chaos. And so you're trauma bonding with the chaos, with the unpredictability, with all the ridiculousness going on. You connected to it. And in your mind, you're trying to understand it. You're trying to control it in a way. But no, this is something from your past that needs to be healed, which is why this feeling of chaos is so familiar and unscary.
Yeah. How do you think it's showing up in our lives? You know, we're all different. How might the chaos be presenting itself?
In a variety of ways. Chaos is coming out in a variety of ways, including drinking a whole lot, stopping your drinking, eating a whole lot, not eating at all, restricting your eating, irritability, isolation, shutting people out, shutting yourself down, anger, yelling, screaming, changing your sex life and your intimacy level with people. It comes out in a lot of ways because everybody's got different coping mechanisms. And that's what it is. It's like whatever it is that you do when you are stressed is your coping mechanism. And the goal is to make sure that you have healthy coping mechanisms and not the unhealthy ones that will make your life even worse.
Where does social media come into play? Because I think there's this, at least for me, there's this need for balance between being informed and finding that, protecting my peace. And social media, I think, is kind of a bullshit excuse for staying informed when there are plenty of other ways that we can stay informed. However, I'm not the only person who says, well, I better go on this app to check and make sure that I'm informed. Where are you with social media?
I think that social media has its place. I think that there are some advantages to have it. It has done a lot for people who are in marginalized communities to be able to connect with other people that see life the way that they do. And so for that, I'm grateful. But I think the other side of it is it's just the surface level of things. How do things look? How do people look? What are those outside external views or ideas on what's healthy and what's positive and what's successful? That is out the window, which I think is hurting us tremendously. And I think that if you don't know exactly how social media is affecting you, take a moment. And when you've grabbed your phone to scroll, think about what were you thinking about right before you grabbed your phone. And you're going to have to do it multiple times because you're not going to remember every time, because reaching out for it has become this knee-jerk response to stress, that even if you don't want to believe that you're stressed, you are, because your mind and your body just starts doing things to try to take care of you and try to protect you. And that's where you have to create personal boundaries, because the mind isn't your best friend. Your mind runs on whatever fuel you give it. And if you give it hysteria and fear, it's going to run on that, and it's going to constantly be seeking those things to reinforce those ideas. But if you give it love and peace and kindness, then your mind is going to run on that fuel, and that's what it's going to look for. So I think it's really important for you to pay attention to yourself. And when you're on social media, think about how you feel when you get off. Do you feel informed? Do you feel enthusiastic? Do you feel joy? Or do you feel depleted? Do you feel angry? Do you feel frustrated? If you feel those negative things, that means it's not helping you. And you may be just reaching out to it, not to help something, but just because it's become a habit.
Right. Well, what would you say, though, if we're getting on there to make sure that we know what's going on in the world? So, of course, you're going to feel frustrated and angry. And, my whole thing is peace, love, and rage, man. Like I have all three of them all the time.
I love that. I love that.
But how do you know that it's not like what's happening that's actually upsetting you and not just the fact that you're using social media?
This is where discernment comes in. And this is where rebellion comes in. We were groomed to believe that rebellion was a bad thing, because rebellion is what continued the patriarchy, and it continues misogyny. It perpetuates these things that if you're going counter to what's the system that's in place, then you run the risk of being exiled. But peace, seeking peace and protecting and guarding your peace, that is now a rebellion. You not being materialistic is now a rebellion. Not being on social media every day, all day is a rebellion. Not watching the news all the time is rebellion. And the reason why we have to see it in a new way is because the circumstances of our lives have changed.
Yeah.
We didn't have 4,000 million channels before.
Yeah.
We only had 3.
Yeah.
We had 3 was when we were kids.
And everything was live. I talked to my kids about that. It's like you just tried to catch it when it was on. That was it. There was no on demand.
Everything was live. And so you were focused on what the story was, and you had trust. You had a trust in whoever was delivering the information that they were trustworthy, because you never got any information to the contrary. The world is very different now, especially when we've got leaders that are introducing alternate facts and, fake news, that you have to take that into account as part of your critical thinking and discernment on what you're going to let in and what you are going to push out. So many people think that if I don't have my finger on the pulse, I'm going to be left behind. I stopped watching mainstream news in 2001. When 9/11 happened, I was so saturated and overwhelmed by all of the media. And part of it had to do with my TV job. I was so overwhelmed by it that I said, I can't do this to myself. So I stopped watching the news back then.
Wow.
And people have thought I've been crazy this whole time. And I'm like, hey, you don't think I knew the pandemic happened? You don't think that I knew like wars happened? You don't think? Yeah. It's everywhere. You dialing in, absolutely, it means that you care. But you not dialing in doesn't mean that you don't care. It just means that you've got a boundary on how information affects you, and you're protecting your peace. And so social media, we didn't have social media forever. We had just the regular news. You could just decide, I'm only going to get my information from a couple of sources, not just one. Because we all know now that it's manipulated, because it's become a profit center.
Yeah.
News that was supposed to be just truth and unbiased is now a profit center. So you can't completely trust it. So this is where you have to build your trust in yourself, and you've got to lean into your intuition. And, intuition, we have been taught, we have been groomed to dismiss our intuition from very early ages, and we don't even realize it. Think about it this way. Little kid wakes up feeling like crap, goes to the parent and goes, I don't feel good. I really feel like crap. I don't think I should go to school. Oh, you're fine. Go ahead. Kid's actually sick, but what you've taught them is to completely dismiss themselves. It's Thanksgiving, it's Christmas, it's a family holiday. The pervy relative wants a hug, and you go, I don't want to hug Uncle so-and-so. Mom, please don't. Oh, just go hug him. Give him a kiss. It'll be quick. We are taught very early on to dismiss ourselves and to ignore our intuition. And that's what needs to come back, so that you can build the discernment to decide, what do you want in your diet and what don't you want in your diet. And your diet is more than food. Your diet is the conversations that you're a part of. It's the media. It's the social media. It's the movies. It's the music. It's the TV shows. What are you allowing in? Because whatever you're allowing in is affecting you, whether you want to believe it or not.
Yeah. And I want to take it. So, that kid who's forced or, strongly encouraged to hug the pervy uncle.
And dismiss themselves.
Yes. And then becomes the woman who says no and is coerced, or is told she's a bitch, or overly emotional, or all of these things into her 20s and 30s and 40s. And then wakes up one day, maybe I'm talking about me, but wakes up one day post-menopausal and is like, hell no, no more. I'm not doing it, enough. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where a lot of women are, where you kind of look back and you're like, what did I subscribe to? What did I believe in, and maybe even didn't even believe in and still participated in?
What was I bullied to believe? What was I forced to dismiss? What did I have to accept, but I didn't want to? This isn't what we want. We are forced into this by our peers, by our family of origin. We are forced into it. And then as life keeps lifing and you go, I don't like that. I don't want to do that. Fuck you. Fuck that.
Yeah.
You go, wait a second. I don't like how I'm reacting to things. I don't like how I feel when I stand up for myself. That is when clients come to me. Typically, that is when their therapy begins. Most of my clients are women over the age of 30 who something has occurred in their life and they're like, ooh, I don't like that. I don't like how I handled it. I don't like how I feel about it. Where did that come from? Why am I acting that way? What do I need to do differently? My clientele are high functioning, high performing adults who have childhood trauma and don't even realize it because they never had a broken bone or a black eye. It's because we've been told to dismiss our emotional neglect when that is what is most detrimental to how we see ourselves and see ourselves in the world.
Well, and then there's the language police who are like, wait, you use the word trauma and what you're describing isn't trauma. And you're like, but it was traumatic, you know? And so I think, you know, being gaslit by people that maybe, you know, maybe you didn't have some big event, you know, in your childhood, but there were like, you know, that whole death by 1,000 paper cuts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's still trauma.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up. There is a group of people that talk about big trauma and little trauma. I hate that shit. And I think that when it comes to trauma, trauma is relative. You know, what that has occurred could be traumatic to me, but it may not be traumatic to you. And vice versa. And that's something that I realized when I was directing MTV's The Real World. One of the things that I thought was so fascinating is something would happen to the roommates in the house and they would all handle it differently. They would all respond and react differently. And I thought that was fascinating. And that was a part of what stoked the interest in human behavior and then transitioning into psychology. Like, what is it that is affecting you that is not affecting me, and why? And a natural thing for us to do as humans, unfortunately, is to dismiss it. I don't understand it, so I'm going to be afraid of it or I'm going to dismiss it. That's not helpful for anybody. Or I'm going to judge the person for feeling this way. I wouldn't have felt that way. So we do a lot of judgment and projection when the better thing to do is to go, wait a second. This person says that they're hurting. I've never hurt like that. Let me think about it and not judge it. Let me get curious and not judgmental. We could get so much done without judging other people and with just trying to take them in and understand. Because there is a way to connect with people that doesn't mean you have to experience the exact same thing. But intuition is so incredibly important because, you know, unfortunately, a lot of us have been taught to ignore it, but that's the thing that saves us. That's what protects us. And that is why I think that we've been groomed to ignore it, because if we don't take care of ourselves, then what do we do to try to take care of ourselves? We buy shit. We buy clothes and purses. We buy people. We buy drugs. We buy alcohol. We zone out. That's not helping us, but that is what our society is saying, because taking a still moment and meditating is still considered controversial. Being quiet, taking a vacation has been told that you're lazy. Why don't you want to keep working? You're lazy. You know, not being ambitious and wanting to grind or being told you need to grind, the grind culture, that flies in the face of capitalism. But you don't have the time to think about that if you're not giving yourself quiet moments to just put the pieces of the puzzle together and go, this doesn't make sense to me. And now I've got the evidence as to why. Sweet. So now I'm going to do things differently. Mm-hmm. We're not slowing down enough to listen to ourselves. And our society is actively working against us listening to ourselves because there's so much money involved when we don't.
Oh, yeah. And I think one of the things that we're lacking is self-compassion, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. And it's like, well, wait, what does that mean? I shouldn't feel this way. Like, that's how you feel. I should be more active. My house should be organized. I mentioned the will and trust thing. Like I am an advocate for people to get their legal paperwork done, right? And don't leave a mess behind. Like those are things that are very important to me. And I've seen so many people in my life die young.
You've seen the mess.
And at the same time, I can see each individual person with all that shame, like, oh, I haven't done it. I haven't done it. Well, hold on. Like you also have just been going through this insanity, or maybe it's terrifying for you, or maybe you have to do it on your own and there's no one here to support you through it, or there's a variety of reasons. But shaming ourselves into anything, whether it's diet and exercise or, adulting or organization or whatever it is, I don't think it's ever worked. Maybe you could speak to that.
No, that's not true. It has worked. It worked for millennia. But it doesn't work anymore because people are waking up and realizing that those old structures, those old systems were never meant to make the greater population better. It was meant to make a few people richer. Those systems worked forever. We just didn't feel empowered enough to push up against it. We just didn't feel strong enough to push up against it. And part of not feeling strong enough is when we saw people push up against the system, they were lynched, they were raped, they were robbed, their houses were set on fire. I remember a few years ago, I overheard a conversation that these two women were having. These two older white women were talking to each other. I think we were like a coffee shop or something. And this was either right before a protest or right after. And one of the ladies said, gosh, everybody's just so angry all of a sudden. Why is everybody so mad? And I thought, pardon me, but I'm totally going to interrupt your conversation with the eavesdropping. That's what I do. I love listening to people's conversations. And I said, you know what? I choose to see it differently. And I think that's one of the powers that we have as individuals. We get to choose how we see everything. You could choose, this is what the group sees, not having children. The group sees that as a woman not having a child looks like this, and a man not having a child, unfortunately, completely looks the complete opposite way. You can choose those, or you can choose something completely different. And so you can choose to beat yourself up for not following along with what society said you should do, or you could use some critical thinking and discernment and go, how many people do I know grew up in households where they were abused or they knew that they weren't loved? Most of them. So that may mean a whole lot of people shouldn't be having children, right? It's okay to have those thoughts. It's necessary to have those thoughts because the alternative is getting yourself into something that you're going to later regret because you just didn't sit and think and go, what feels right to me? What feels right to me? And we've got to build that self-trust in us because we have it as little kids, but it gets tamped down by our family of origin, our parents, our grandparents, our neighbors, our siblings, by our coaches, our teachers, our classmates. That's why everyone's heard the stories about how all little kids are geniuses and connected to multiple dimensions, from birth until when they start school. At least in the American education system, we're all geniuses. We're all open. We're all loving and accepting until we get into the system that says being an individual does not work. Thinking on your own does not work because the system is built on capitalism and you haven't figured that out yet.
Right.
But there needs to always be something that you're afraid of not having, something that you're not good enough for. So therefore, you've got to buy these things to try to make yourself feel better, which is external. It's looking for outside things to validate you when every single thing that a person needs is already inside them. You don't even need therapy. You just need to trust yourself and trust your intuition. I have conversations with clients regularly. And it's typically in a situation where I am their first therapist. Well, I'll say, Jackie, every single thing that I've said to you has resonated so strongly because it was already in you. You already knew. You already knew. It's in you. I'm not a magician. I'm not psychic. But you know what you need. You know what you want and what you don't want. And what we've got to get into the habit of doing is trusting ourselves, even when the people around us aren't strong enough to trust themselves. The trusting of yourself and getting back to who you are. I believe that that's what all of it is. I believe that we are all, whether you realize it or not, getting back to the essence of who we are in our natural state of soul and spirit. We are souls living a human experience. We're human right now, but there's so much that we don't understand that is fun to talk about because there's truth to it and because it helps us feel our loads are lighter, because they are lighter when you don't think that the buck stops just with you or it stops with your church, when you've gotten evidence to the contrary of that being the truth that you want to live by. Trusting yourself and your intuition is so extremely important. And the thing is, the more you trust yourself, the louder that voice gets. Because right now, society's voice is very loud and it's the loudest voice in most people's heads, society, through social media. But when you start listening to yourself, that voice gets quiet. Your own intuition, your higher self, your future self, whatever you want to call it, spirit, source, that voice gets louder until you clamp onto it and go, all right, this is the right way for me to go. And then it'll get quiet because it'll know that you trust you. So it doesn't have to scream at you. It doesn't have to have these moments where you die. You almost died twice in 1 month, like I did last year. You know, there are these things we have to pay attention to ourselves. And I think that's the thing.
True story, by the way, just in case someone's listening and they think like, no, she's just kidding. No, she's not kidding.
I almost died twice in 4 weeks. The anniversary of that was yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
Yesterday is when I entered the emergency room after landing from 3 weeks in Asia. And so much has happened in the last year, so much and not much at the exact same time, as strange as that sounds. I've always been a really ambitious person. I've always wanted to get a lot done. I've wanted to have a lot associated with my name and legacy. And then when I almost died twice, I was like, why did that happen? What am I supposed to learn from this? What have I been ignoring? And it's been eye-opening. This last year has been really eye-opening. And the bottom line is I was dismissing myself. I was ignoring myself because that's what I was groomed to do. That is what 99% of all women are groomed to do. Dismiss yourself.
Yes.
And it comes in so many different ways. Don't be the bitch. Don't say no. Just let it happen. You're too loud. You're bossy.
You're too sensitive. Like when something bothers you, you're too sensitive.
You're too sensitive. You can't be angry. That's a big one. So many women have been told to dismiss their emotions. And most importantly, the emotion that they're told to dismiss is anger. Only men are allowed to be angry. A woman can't be angry because that's not sexy, unless it's BDSM.
Right.
Unless you're paying for it and it's this counter thing. But there's this book that I believe the world should know about. It's by Gabor Mate, Gabor. Mate is Mate. He is a medical doctor. He started out delivering babies and then transitioned into psychiatry. And his focus is chemical dependency and childhood trauma. And yes, they are related. And he wrote a book called The Myth of Normal. The myth of normal is all those conspiracy theories backed by data. Yes, your phone was created to hijack your mind and addict you. Yes, women do get diagnosed with, immuno diseases exponentially more than men. Yes, women do have depression more than men do. And here are the reasons why. Because we've been told to suppress our reality in order to serve the patriarchy. And in that suppression, we've gotten cancer. Mm-hmm. We've gotten sicker because we're not expressing all of ourselves, but because we're pleasing the people around us. Hell no, rebel against it. Take care of yourself. Please yourself. What do you want to do? I had this great time with a girlfriend of mine. We went to this petting zoo. And we're playing with all the mini cows and the mini goats. And our conversation switched into this place of, and I can't even remember the catalyst, but it was like, I don't want to do that, so I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And it's just that simple. But like, I know it's simple only because I've personally done the work on my people pleaser selves that was like, I can't make somebody mad. I can't upset someone. I shouldn't disappoint them. What are they going to do to me? Now, that first fear came from violence. We are doing those things. We're people pleasing because we don't want to get beaten. We don't want to get raped. We don't want to get harmed in some way. And that is largely based in what men have done to us. And then it switched to what women have done to us, because then I don't want to be the outcast. I don't want to be the loner because I don't care about, what all the other girls are caring about. But even if what they care about is destructive and you're on the outside of that, then there's still the fear of being ostracized and being alone. So standing on your own 2 feet, unfortunately, is rebellious in these days, but we need that rebellion. Rebellion is resistance against the systems that don't work for us. So rebel.
Absolutely. I think that we have to rebel against the idea that we should want, like, I'm just going to go to something so basic like decluttering, right? Like my closet. And, there's all this stuff online and you follow all these organization experts and this and that. And you're like, oh, I should be doing that. And then Saturday comes and goes and you feel terrible about yourself because I didn't do it. Guess what? There's a good chance you just don't care. Like, there's a good chance that is not something you value. Don't clean your closet.
Fuck that closet. Fuck that closet. I love that you brought that up. That is absolutely true. Like, that's just like that's not a driver for you anymore.
Right.
And it's okay. And that's what I realized. Like, there are all these things that I want to do and all these things I said that I want to do. And then I realized I don't have the energy or motivation to do any of that crap. What does that say about me?
Well, right. It says nothing about you. But
it says nothing, but I don't need it to say about me. I get to decide what it says about me.
Yeah.
I get to decide. That means that's no longer important to me, or I'm healing from this other thing.
Right. There may have been a younger version of you who truly wanted that. And that's amazing. But I think the thing I really want to get clear is we need to sit down now. Like, that's why my journal is everything to me. I love my journal because all of my bullshit comes out and I go, that's not what I believe at all. Like, that is an older version of me. And maybe, it's people going through perimenopause or menopause, but you just start to get to a point where you're like, how many women are getting divorced or empty nest or taking care of older parents or whatever it is. And just going, this thing that I say I value has nothing to do with who I am today. And so, like, really getting honest about that. Like, I have a workshop coming up that, I'll share later, but, where people are just like, get honest with the thing that's hanging over your head. Is it actually yours? And
that honesty.
That's the work.
It's a lot of work. And I love that you brought it up. It's because it's absolutely true, is that, we can be driven by dreams of other people.
Yeah.
And a lot of us are. This is what my mom always wanted. This is what my dad always wanted. But is it what you want?
Right.
It's okay that you don't want what they wanted. It's crazy. I was watching this reality show on Netflix called, not a reality show. It was a documentary called Caterpillar. It was these people that go to India and they change their eye color. And it's dark-skinned people changing their eye color to blue and green and gray. And this man did it. He had a lot of trauma. And so, but he chose to ignore the trauma and only focus on the outside. And hello, if that is not our world. But there's something that the mom said as he was trying to appeal to her about how he feels. She was like, I own you. I own you. Eesh. And so many people feel owned, even by parents that are dead. They feel this allegiance, this ownness that your life is not your own. And it absolutely is your own. And so there has to be a redefinition moment that happens within us in a variety of ways. Redefining what success means, redefining what independence means, redefining what healing means, everything. Those theories, those thoughts mean what you were taught they mean by other people. And those people may not have been healthy. They may not have been positive. They just carried on what they were taught. And so you have to have a level of honesty with yourself that is hard. But once you cross over into it, it's freeing because you see the world in a whole new light. You see your whole self in a new light because a lot of people are just seeing themselves through the lens of their mothers, their grandmothers, their fathers that they were trying to please. But those people weren't pleased with themselves. They weren't happy with themselves. And you have to have those moments where you're really truthful with yourself about the people who had the biggest influence on you. And was it healthy? Was it helpful? And it typically isn't. It's typically not helpful. A lot of times it is. And that's why you do have to take the strengths that you've learned, the healthy things that you've learned, the confidence that you've learned from your ancestors. But there's some stuff that is harmful to you that you've carried the baton generation after generation, and it doesn't help you at all.
One of the things that's really important to me is that we don't have somebody listening and going, oh, all of this is bringing all of this up. Like, this is me. You're spot on. Da, da, da. Now we're done. Thanks so much for listening. So what are some things that we can do today and the next week and the coming months? How can we heal? And I know that healing is a long game.
Non-linear.
It's not a one and done. But what are some of the things that we can do, Melody, to really regulate ourselves and feel better in our bodies and really be able to say, no, that's not what I want, so I'm not going to do it?
There are many things that can be done. Regulating your nervous system is extremely important. When you notice that you're tight, your shoulders are in your ears, you just feel this sense of stress and you don't know why, pay attention to that. Is it high blood pressure? Is it anxiety? Is it something completely different? Get it checked out. Pay attention to your body because our body is that first beacon that says, hey, pay attention, wake up, eyes open, pay attention to your body. But again, so many women have been told not to due to childhood sexual assault. You're told to completely ignore your body.
And never mind the fact that doctors don't necessarily listen to women, or more so women of color. That's a whole other episode we can get into. But yes, okay, so we're paying attention to our bodies.
And we should do it. That is a whole other episode. But just, listening to yourself is so incredibly important because what that does is that starts to develop that discernment of, I know I am the expert of myself, of my body. That doctor is saying I totally need to ignore my fatigue and my brain fog, but I've never been fatigued or brain fogged before. So I'm going to pass over this person. No disrespect, but I'm going to go get curious. I'm not going to be so judgmental of that person because I now know with all the information that studies on women was not okayed. It wasn't approved until 1993. And how long have we been on this planet?
Yeah.
How long have we been making people for this planet? So, taking it in that way, not taking things so personally, but just like, okay, I just need to look deeper, empowering yourself to do that because your health is the most important thing. You've got to make your peace the most important thing in your life and repel anything that goes against that peace. And that putting that lens on in your day-to-day will help you when someone's asking you to do something that you don't really want to do. And you notice that your face frowns and your shoulders just slump and you get a pit in your stomach. That's your body saying, say no, don't do it. You don't want to do this. This is going to help you at all. You're being used, whatever it is. Listen, trust. No, I'm not going to do that. And, a lot of what we do now in our adult ages, those reflexes, those reactions were created when we were little kids and we didn't have access to mentors. We couldn't get in a car and move away. We didn't know how to escape our current environment. So we just had to make it work. But we're still, a lot of people are 50 making it work with mechanisms from when they were 5. Overeating, going silent, just crying. You've got to evolve and grow up your coping mechanisms. And that's where being honest with yourself comes into play. You've got to take care of yourself. Self-care goes way beyond manicures, pedicures, massages. Self-care is, I know every time I go to that party, someone insults me and it drives me crazy and it ruins my whole night. So guess what? I'm not going to that party this year. I know that every time I say yes to making the cupcakes for the class party, I'm exhausted. They complain. It pisses me off. So this year, I'm just going to buy them, or I'm going to tell somebody else to handle the cupcakes. I'm going to do decorations.
Plates and napkins. Plates and napkins. I was always that person.
Plates and napkins. Just be honest with yourself. Yeah. And I know that people haven't been honest with you before, but that doesn't mean that you can't change the tide. You need to, because the people around you learn from you, especially if you have children. One of the things I love to do is you take a calendar. You can print it, a blank calendar from Google. Put your self-care items on that calendar and do not reschedule them or cancel them for anybody.
What do those events look like?
They look like going on a walk in nature. Nature is so incredibly healing and restoring. Hanging out with your girlfriends and talking about silly shit, not necessarily talking about the news of the day. Playing with your cat and just like rolling around with your cat. Going to a stupid movie, cooking your favorite meal. Self-care is anything that restores you for you. It's not about doing stuff for other people necessarily, but sometimes when people are seriously depressed or they focus too much on themselves, sometimes their self-care needs to be volunteering. It needs to be taking your energy off yourself and pouring it into other people.
For sure.
But you need to get outside of your own crap. Don't be mired in your own crap. Look at your stuff with a loving, positive eye, a loving, positive lens. How am I going to learn from this situation? Not how I messed up. How can I learn? What is the lesson in this moment? What can I take from this and be better? That's what processing is. A lot of people have a really bad understanding of what processing is. Processing isn't thinking something to death. That's rumination. Processing is I'm thinking about something a lot. And then I'm thinking, how did that make me feel? Because the emotions are important about a history or a memory. How do I feel about this thing? How do I want to feel? What is a better thought and feeling about this situation that will serve me better? It's that evolution from just thinking it to death, and you end up in the same place every time. You end up in a new place. That's really, really important. And I think it's okay to look at social media for, new terms of psychology that can help you in, your behavior, but don't just rely on social media, just like you won't rely on just one news station. You won't rely on just one author. You won't rely on just one therapist. Bring it all together, all this information you're getting. This is a part of critical thinking. Bring it all together and then use your discernment to decide what makes sense most for my life. Because a lot of people think self-care is mani-pedis and massages, and they can't afford them. But they don't know just going on a walk without music in their ear is also self-care. Letting your kids play and you not being in charge of their play all the time is also self-care. Delegating is self-care. Deleting things from your calendar altogether is self-care. You have a right to do things differently. And I think that's a reason why so many people don't do things differently. It's because you've got people that love you, but people that are stagnant that go, but that's not the way we do things. We've always done it this way. Well, you can keep doing it this way. Yeah. I'm going to rebel. I'm going to do it this way. You can think whatever you want to think. I'm doing something else. And that's okay. We need to allow other people to come to the right conclusions about their own lives. It doesn't have to be a certain way because of us, because that's projection. And we should not be projecting ourselves on other people when we know that other people have different backgrounds, different barriers, different challenges. Let people do whatever the hell they want to do. You take care of you in the way that works best for you.
Perfect. Perfect ending. I am joining your rebellion. I would follow you anywhere. Melody, you have to come back soon, okay? Please, promise me.
Absolutely. I'd love that.
If any part of this conversation hit home, if you heard yourself in something Melody said, I want to invite you to something. On April 18th, I'm hosting a free live session called Handle Your Shit. We are going to sit together virtually and get honest about the things that are hanging over our heads, the stuff you keep meaning to do, the thing you feel guilty about every time you think about it. We're going to figure out what's yours to carry, what you can put down, and what we're actually going to do about the rest. No shame, no judgment, just grown-ass support and a plan. It's free, it's live, and it's exactly for women like us. So join me for Handle Your Shit. Go to grownasswoman.guide/handle to grab your spot. The link is also in the show notes, and I will see you there. Thank you so much for listening. Please share this with a friend. You know the one. She needs to hear this message. And make sure you hit favorite, follow, or subscribe wherever you are listening to this, because you definitely don't want to miss the next episode. Full blog post and transcript can be found on grownasswoman.guide. I'm Jackie McDougall. Until next time, you are a grown-ass woman. Act accordingly.